Dmitry Bivol wins a 12-round unanimous decision over Jean Pascal, retaining his WBA World Light Heavyweight title. Now, Dmitry Bivol is, I think, a guy who a lot of people had high hopes for. I remember this fight right here against Trent Broadhurst, where he knocked Broadhurst out with one right hand. Spectacular shot. People were really singing his praises after that and saying, oh, this guy is going to be the next big thing. Then he fought Sullivan Barrera and became the first man to stop Barrera in good fashion. It was a good fight all the way. Totally outboxed him and eventually stopped him. People were impressed by that too. But his last two performances, including tonight's against Pascal, left a lot to be desired in the minds of a lot of fans, from what I've noticed. Now, he looked unspectacular against Chilemba and Pascal, but he didn't look vulnerable. Because those are two different things. That's a distinction we have to make. Looking unspectacular is one thing, looking vulnerable is something else. Now, every fighter has weaknesses, so I'm sure you're going to get some nitpickers in the comments saying, oh, Hatman, he did look vulnerable. Well, he didn't get dropped. He didn't get hit a lot. He didn't get wobbled. He didn't get outboxed. So, of course, there are some weaknesses there, as all fighters have weaknesses, but overall, he looked solid to me. It was a solid but unspectacular performance, just as it was against Chilemba. And if you look at Elida Alvarez, for example, Alvarez has been doing the same thing most of his career. Alvarez has been looking solid, not vulnerable, but unspectacular. Prior to the Kovalev fight, was there any Alvarez fight that really made you sit up and think, wow, this guy's a serious force? No. That's why the Kovalev fight was such a big upset, because Alvarez hadn't looked like a devastating kind of light heavyweight, The fact he was able to take Kovalev out in such devastating fashion is what made it a shock. But yeah, Alvarez, solid but unspectacular, and that's what Bivol has been in his past two fights. Now, as far as the way the Pascal fight went down, Pascal tried hard. He tried to old man Bivol in there, but all of Pascal's old flaws were still very much there. Pascal has always been a guy with poor balance. Pascal has always been a guy with questionable punch technique. Pascal has always been a guy who doesn't have the greatest work rate or the greatest stamina. And I'm not sure how old Pascal is now. He must be in his mid to late 30s. With all those weaknesses, he's learned how to fight conservatively for him, which is usually a low work rate, fighting in bursts. And back in the days, Pascal used to fight with his hands low. In this fight, he had his hands high for long stretches. And he understood he's not a young man anymore. He can't rely on reflexes to get away from shots, particularly not against a fast-handed fighter like Dmitry Bivol, who's in his athletic prime right now at 27 years old. And there's a difference between athletic prime and technical prime. Okay, I've talked about this in previous videos. But he's certainly in his athletic prime at 27. You can't afford to be having your hands low when you're, mid to late 30s. So Pascal had his hands up, blocking a lot of shots. Did get caught with one right hand, which resulted in an incident which Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman thought was a knockdown, but Roy Jones tried to argue that it wasn't a knockdown. And it's an incident where Bivol landed a big right hand on Pascal, and half a second later, Pascal swung a big left hook and missed, and he toppled over. Now, some referees would have counted that as a knockdown, but this particular referee didn't. He was very close to the action, and he said, maybe he thought he was borderline, but he let Pascal get away with it. I am certainly of the belief that if Bivol hadn't landed that right hand half a second or a second before Pascal threw the left hook, Pascal wouldn't have gone down. I know Roy Jones was adamant that Kellerman and Lampley were wrong, but I have to side with them. I think minus that punch, Pascal would have gone down. Minus that punch, Pascal wouldn't have gone down. So, I don't know. I wouldn't have complained too much if a referee called that a knockdown. Let's just put it that way. But be that as it may, other than that incident, Pascal was never in any serious trouble. He never looked on the verge of being stopped. And understandably, the HBO team were constantly comparing Bivol's performance against Pascal to Kovalev's 2 performances against Pascal. And Kovalev certainly did a much more destructive and decisive job on Pascal than Bivol did. With that being said, in the first Kovalev-Pascal fight, Kovalev got hit quite a lot, whereas Bivol really didn't get hit that much by Pascal. He got caught with a few shots here and there, but not as consistently as Kovalev did in the first fight. Pascal never been a big puncher. I don't know why you've got some people out there saying Pascal was a banger. No, Pascal was never a big puncher. He's got okay power, but he's never been a Stevenson or a Kovalev or, a Beterbiev. He's never had that kind of concussive force. So, yeah, he swung a few times and he caught Bivol once or twice with those wild shots. But for the most part, Bivol was in control. Very fast hands, using his combinations, nice body shots, varying his work from head to body. And did his thing. It was a workmanlike performance. The comparisons with Kovalev, I mean, he doesn't appear to be as heavy-handed as Kovalev. I'll definitely say that. But he's a lot faster, a lot more snappy, and maybe a more versatile fighter. We'll see. We haven't seen Bivol's heart tested yet, or his chin really tested, and we're going to have to find out what those are like. But so far, so good from him, as far as I can see. Again, not as heavy-handed as Kovalev, but faster, more of a combination puncher, and potentially more versatile. And lastly, I have to talk about the HBO team. This was the last HBO show for the foreseeable future, maybe forever, when it comes to boxing. And you could tell that in the tone of the commentary team's voices. They all sounded kind of downbeat and not their usual chirpy selves. And Harold Lederman, during one of the rounds when he was asked for his scorecard, Harold Lederman actually sounded like he was eating and drinking. Like, seriously, that's how much he didn't give a you-know-what about appearing professional anymore. Because when they asked him, what's your scorecard, Harold? My man had a mouthful of sandwich or bagel or whatever he was eating, slurping it down with whiskey. Allegedly. So, yeah, that was funny. That was one of the most entertaining moments of the night, actually, for me, hearing Harold Lederman eating on the job. But yeah, it was, again, solid, unspectacular performance, and the second one in a row for Dmitry Bivol. But just because he's unspectacular, it don't mean he can't pull out a spectacular performance in the future. As I've already mentioned, we've seen Alida Alvarez do that. Yeah? So, anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who would you like to see Dmitry Bivol fight going forward? And remember, Dmitry Bivol is now no longer on HBO because HBO are out of boxing. Where's Dmitry Bivol going to go in terms of his network situation? Will he go to ESPN? If he does, who's on ESPN? Vodcek, right? No. Is Vodcek a top-ranked guy? I'm sure he is. I know Vodcek's fighting on Showtime against Stevenson. But Vodcek, is he top-rank? I can't think who Vodcek's with right now. Is Vodcek with top-rank? I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is. Yeah. In fact, I'm certain he's a top-ranked fighter. So that would mean Vodcek's on ESPN, primarily. So, if Vodcek beats Stevenson, you could see Bivol versus Vodcek if he goes to ESPN. If Bivol goes to Showtime, you could see him in there against a Badu Jack. You could see him in there against a Stevenson if Stevenson beats Vodcek. And if he goes to DAZN, you could see him in there against Artur Beterbiev. because Beterbiev has got some kind of deal with DAZN. If he gets past Joe Smith, I think the Joe Smith fight is still happening, then you could see the unification with Bivol. And that's a fight I'd definitely love to see. In fact, I'd love to see any of the unifications. And as far as Alvarez, I forgot to mention, Alvarez at the moment is still a PBC guy. So yeah, Showtime would be the place for Bivol if he wants to chase down the Alvarez fight. Yeah, Showtime will got Alvarez and Stevenson. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know who you would like to see Dmitry Bivol fight. And how do you think he would do against the other light heavyweight champions and top contenders? Drop it all in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. It's happening, I'm out.
Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.